Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sonic Without Defeating a Badnik, the online challenge series that is resurrected once in a blue moon. Don't fact check that one. Sega has brought the subject of today's video to modern platforms with the newly released Sonic X Shadow Generations. I could make a comment about the name, but I'm sure the internet has me covered. This release brings a remastered version of Sonic Generations to current gen platforms and includes the newest entry starring the edgiest of hedgies with Shadow Generations. I have my thoughts about that release, but that'll wait for another time. You'll come back for that video, right? Anyway, today I will be making the original far less fun to play. Sonic Generations was the only boost formula game that I frequently returned to. The level design, for the most part, is pretty stellar, the gameplay is solid, and the music is probably in my top 5 soundtracks in the series. And it still looks good for being a 13-year-old game. Oh, and don't get me started on the nostalgia that I never had when it released. That's something I can elaborate on further when I'm ready to do a Sonic review marathon. For now, let's go over the rules. I cannot defeat a single Badnik by my own actions. Jumping, boosting, sliding, etc. If I'm directly involved with it, it counts. Doing so will force me to restart the level from the beginning. The challenge is over when I either defeat the time eater and get to the end credits, or if I give up. This challenge seemed like it would be a breeze, but I completely forgot about the in-game challenges. It is part of the game, so those will be played with the rules enforced. If you like videos like these, like, sub, comment, all that jazz. And now that the rules are set and the call to actions are out of the way, let's answer the question, can you beat Sonic Generations without defeating a Badnik? Let's find out. We start off our adventures like many others, by getting stuck. The Motobug, Buzzers, Choppers, Crabmeats, and Buzz Bombers are easy to avoid. The trouble is this S-tube. Going through it will send Sonic rolling into 3 Motobugs. Okay, maybe I can jump before hitting them or something. I cannot. One of the strange things with Sonic Generations' classic gameplay is that jumping is restricted when you go through these tubes, unless you go backwards. This is where I had to tweet about my little issue, and thankfully I received many great resources for this video, including the Sonic Generations episode of Son of a Glitch. A and Start demonstrates the speed glitch known as D-Speed. This requires moving the analog stick just enough to start moving and then using the spin dash to get a speed boost that isn't normally possible. Since we're in 2D, holding up will make things so much easier because I can slowly move the analog stick in the direction I want to go. There's a small hill that's perfect for this D-Speed enhanced spin dash jump, but after many attempts, I could not get it. I decided to do more digging around and found this tutorial by Sonic Team Hero. The video itself is great, but the pinned comment is what gave it away. It turns out D-Speed is difficult to execute on PC, so I'm gonna have to switch to my other version of Sonic Generations, on Xbox. Now that I've restarted, I set up Classic Sonic, and after many more tries, I finally got it. It's too bad I knocked out some Badniks, which means I have to do it again. After a bit more time, I get it again, though it's not much of a speed increase this time, but it doesn't matter because we can finally keep going. Really, the only big issue I had with this is the spin dash taking me nowhere. It could be because I'm mashing the X button, but it worked the one time that I needed it to. I went along the high ground as long as I could, until I missed the second collapsing platform. It's not a huge problem as the big swing and descending platform take me back up to avoid the buzzers. After 3 red springs, I had to drop down and avoid falling from here on out. After some big swinging platforms and 2 springs, we make it to the goal. If the rest of the game is like this, I think the challenge is going to be a piece of cake. Cutscene, 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 and now we're at the second act. I'm gonna skip all the cutscenes going forward. The start isn't too bad. Move around the Motobugs and take the kitten-killing red rings on the rails and... Hey, I didn't call it that, okay? Aaron Weber said that.
All of the orange rings right here are bad. Very bad, evil, kitten-killing orange rings.
Now we're in a more narrow spot where the Motobugs are going to do damage. Thankfully, it is possible to squeeze past them after getting back up, which is odd considering that their collision is smaller than the hitbox itself. The upcoming higher route is inaccessible due to the Buzz Bombers that are past the spring, but it also means we have nothing to worry about on the rail section, since there's no enemies in sight. I go up until I slide through, and this is where I need to drop a bit to get around the Crabmeat and Buzzer. Avoid the Crabmeats, stomp the bridge, and dodge the remaining Motobugs to finish the level. Before we move on, Sonic Generations has a feature where you can purchase and equip skills on both Sonics. I'm gonna have to come back to these when I need to, because I don't have enough points for everything. The other thing is that you can start either Act 1 or Act 2 as the first level in that zone. So I'm going to be doing whatever order I'm interested in at that time. Chemical Plant Act 1 begins with a mindless dash through these loops, but I stopped to hop over the button, which seemed like a great idea. And it was. The game is pretty forgiving with the Spinies I came across, as this path currently has 2 Badniks. This is more of a platforming section, so the lack of enemies is a relief. That is, until I came across a Spiny in this low ceiling bit. I'm not too confident with a jump, so I made the choice to get knocked backwards and land on top of the Spiny. Since the enemies still have collision, it's my best option. From there, it's a water slide and some running to wrap up the level. Act 2 has a lot of room to run past the spinies, so I took the rail on the left. In the 2D section, I had to stop boosting until I'm at this block. Good thing there's nothing on the other side of it. The grabber was my only real concern because I'm so used to using the homing attack. A water slide and a dive later and I'm in the water. With the physics, avoiding things became a lot easier, but that's because of the platforms. After I get the next checkpoint, I had to be very careful with my jump because of this grabber above the yellow bricks. One checkpoint later, and I fell victim to a glitch that is exclusive to the Xbox Series upgrade version of Sonic Generations. Grab this thing and watch as you launch into the abyss. After owning this game for years, I should have been aware of it by now. I avoid the last group of spinies by boosting to the rail above all of them to finish Chemical Plant Zone. If you haven't seen some of this wackiness brought by the Xbox Series upgrade, check out ChannelPup's video on it. I don't think it covers everything, but it covers enough to make this upgrade a double-edged sword of sorts. Sky Sanctuary Act 1 begins with some damage boosting to get below this egg robo. Sorry Sonic, those robo picks come with a price. From there, the cloud bounced me up to get some rings and a missed jump to be in front of another egg robo. I need a restart. I made the jump on the return and now I have to drop before I'm shot by this duo egg robo setup. I drop again at the solo robo and now we're in a bit of a tricky spot. The egg robo here is too low for me to run underneath it. If I spin dash, I'm going to destroy it, so that's out of the question. I figured Sonic could jump high enough, but unfortunately I was wrong. I fail it again the second time around and now I had to think about skills. I assumed there would be one that could help with the height of my jump, but unfortunately that's not the case. It didn't matter since I lacked the proper points to purchase anything. After weighing my options, my only solution is to try getting knocked over the egg robo. It took me a few tries, but I made it over the first one, walked under the second one, but come across something I wasn't expecting. Egg robo number 3. Jumping over him doesn't work. I got the damage boost when I returned, but there's a huge problem here. There is not enough space for Sonic to squeeze through. This also means it's not possible to beat Sonic Generations without defeating a Badnik. Even if I was able to get through it, the next egg robo is positioned in a way where I was not going to be able to damage boost or jump over it. And before anyone tells me to use the Thunder Shield, you can't unlock it until you get to City Escapes challenges, and I'm on a new save file. I know this challenge is done here, but I actually do want to show off the rest of the game. It'd be kind of pointless to stop at this point, so let's keep going. Act 2 starts really easy as all I need to do is run through 3 egg robos. I stuck to the higher path until I got to the rainbow rings, and from here I took the alternate path. I'm tempted by the many egg robos, but it's smooth sailing through this building on the lower route. The red rings are calling my name, so I went for it, and there's a lot of platforming and freedom in this section because all of the Badniks are spread apart. I was trying to switch the zip lines that I was on, but it could be another enhancement bug. The rest of the 3D section is pretty easy, and the 2D section was just given to me because the egg robo decided to protect itself. There's this one pit that I can cheese easily by using the teleporter, and Sky Sanctuary is done. Well, if you ignore, you know. The main levels are over, so now we need to tackle the challenges. We cannot move on in the game until we gather 3 keys, 1 for each zone, and get the Chaos Emerald in a character battle. Speaking of, I decided to beat Metal Sonic so I can get the Emerald. I tried Lookout Below in Green Hill Zone Act 2, but these buzzers are required to get to the end. Tails Way Past Fast has a similar issue near the beginning, so it's also a no-go. Jump Rush was the challenge to go for since you don't really need to come close to the crab meats unless you really mess up. In Chemical Plant, the underwater ring machine had a few too many grabbers for it to be possible. Also, you lose rings when you take damage, which defeats the purpose of completing that challenge. Taking the leap together has our silly pink hedgehog Amy helping us out. Everything's pretty easy until I get out of the water. I had to damage boost the grabber to get over it, but the rest of the challenges are cakewalks, so we can move on. Sky Sanctuary's Buried Treasure is another easy one because it's a fully 3D challenge where you can walk around every single egg robo. With that, all of the challenges are done, so is the Death Egg Robot, to clear the Genesis era of the game. Speed Highway begins with taking a balloon to the higher route. Then I died. Low route it is. I did come across 2 cop speeders, but they can be easily avoided. From there, we decide to commit a misdemeanor. Wait, what period of time does Speed Highway take place? Those are not cars from the late 90s. They all look like older style vehicles. From there, I hit the button to be sent to a building where I'm chased for the misdemeanor from earlier. After dropping into the parking structure, I'm stuck. There's a spinner at the end of this moving platform, and unfortunately spin dashing doesn't work. So I'm gonna have to restart. I get to a point before the parking structure and I use the glass to avoid falling all the way down. It gets me around that spinner, which is a great help. It gets me really far. Take the helicopter, get launched a couple times, do a little platforming, and I'm stuck again. I have to Badnik bounce off this Thunder Spinner to move on, which sucks. I come back to the platforms before the Thunder Spinner, I drop down before the checkpoint, and aside from 1 cop speeder, I make it to the end of the level with ease. That was a fun one. I just had to redirect my route a few times, but yeah, that was good. Act 2 is so damn good to play. The first outdoor 2D section is where a tricky spot lies. The spinner's a little too low, so I had to hit the spikes. Well, it worked after one death. There's not a lot going on until this building. The cop speeders are hitting pillars, so you can't really blame that one on me. They had all the opportunities to move out of the way. And now, a moment of silence for... Back to the action, I seem to be unable to drift. I should probably take notes from my Joy-Cons. But in the final 2D section, I volunteered to be roadkilled to get the cops off my back, and the level is pretty much done. Now it's time for a change in this challenge. I went with Act 2 first. As I'm having fun with these ramps, I forget that the enemies are around here as well. And now for the most terrifying part of this level, these two gun hunters. Sadly, it means I have to slow down. After that, it's some careful platforming until I fell down. Twice. And after the big loop, I guess I was feeling confident because I used the boost over the gun beetle. The gun hunters were no problem until I got to this lone one, and for whatever reason, I tried to jump over it, but I wasn't able to jump high enough. Thank goodness for the speed booster because I can use that in this bar to get over. From there, I moved around one more beetle, and the level is over after a chase sequence. I actually thought I was going to come across an enemy somewhere in this chase sequence, so I had to avoid boosting. Act 1 begins with an attempt to go to the highest path possible to hit this yellow spring. Once I go face first into the gun hunter, there's a new problem. Jumping close to the hunter really isn't possible, so I'll have to spin dash jump over this whole section. Even landing on the edge won't do anything since Sonic doesn't jump high enough to make it. I made an attempt to do the D-speed glitch, but I think it was a normal spin dash jump. It works and I cleared the gun hunters. Now for another challenge that I should have remembered. After the truck makes a turn, the hunters come back and will make it harder to move forward. I went for the damage boost again, but for some reason some of the shots were going past Sonic. They had that stormtrooper aim. I assumed the only one I could rely on is the gun hunter in front of me, but it turns out the one on the floating platform nearby will connect and sent me over. The next part is a waiting game because I had to wait for the truck to take out another hunter so I could drop down to a lower path. This led to me being stuck until the truck returns to do a sick jump. It also opened up a red spring that allowed me to move on. I figured taking the rings and avoiding the skateboard would be to my benefit. Unfortunately, spin dash jumping ruined the whole thing. On the next attempt, I was able to bypass the gun hunters in that section with the floating platforms before the loop, which means no more damage boosting through there. Back at the hunter I took down, it turns out Sonic can jump over this one. I just had to land it. I said screw it and went for a spin dash jump on the ramp before the item box. It worked and I was able to continue down the lower path until I jumped over a hunter and into the abyss again. I went for the spin dash jump on the ramp again and hit a gun hunter as it was dropping down. What amazing luck. One more time and I make it past that section again to miss another jump. Back to the ramp, I managed to collide with the hunter, but neither of us took damage. I'll take it. Pretty cool, but I missed the jump again. What's crazy is that sometimes I'll undershoot it, other times I'll land on the edge and I'll slip off the platform, and it's just like, why? After so many attempts. I made the damn jump, got to the final section, damage boost under the gun beetle, and finished the level. Thank God it's over. I know half of the deaths were my fault, but still, what the hell? Anyway, let's keep going. We're returning to a classic Sonic stage with Seaside Hill Act 1. I say hello to this egg pond and narrowly avoid the choppers on the collapsing platform. The lower path is better because the higher one has a few too many jumps that required hitting Badniks. Getting out of the water presents another path, but it appears to be too high up. The lower cannon took me to a bad spot. The area is a little too low and there's an egg pond in the way. There's not enough room to get decent footing and jump over, so I'm at a dead end. If he had a blaster, I could probably make it through with damage boosting, but unfortunately he doesn't. Back at the two cannons, I figured I should try the D-speed glitch again, but I think it was another spin dash jump. Either way, it took me to the red ring, which is above the egg pond, and before I'm asked, I checked many times to see if I hit that chopper. We're good to go. A little further down and I had to drop down thanks to another egg pond. Everything after the cannons has been smooth sailing, not even the fans could hold me down. It is at this point I am made aware of another glitch in Sonic Generations. I chose to not fall this time so I could take the one on the left, and from there I dodge one more egg pond, avoid the two wheels, and this level has been beaten. Act 2 begins with speed. Everything is good until I reach the 2D section. These spinners were a little too close for a good first jump, but something else caught my eye on the way there. I wanted to see where that left path would take me, then I saw the egg pond and I said never mind. Anyway, there's just enough room to do some wall jumps. I did that, avoid the spikes, and said hello to this egg pond to be on my way. There's a route that I normally take from here. It allows me to grab the red star ring, and it's fun to take out the Badniks along the way. However, in this playthrough, it's not as much fun to do so since one wrong move and I'll have to start over. I actually almost cleared it, but I undershot the jump on the final pit. And the worst part is that I have to start over anyways because that was my final life. At the electric spinner, I dropped down to get into the cannon to be greeted by two other spinners. And on the second attempt of that route, a boost got me past them. Turtles or cart? Cart. If the turtle section is anything like Sonic Heroes, I'm gonna have to fight some Badniks to get by. Here, it's all driving. In fact, this is where the level is over. It's pretty empty for the rest of it, so we can move on. Once I was at this point, I immediately wanted to get the Thunder Shield. A double jump is a great addition to our moveset for Classic Sonic. The majority of the challenge has little of note. The only trouble spot is this fire being shot upwards. Unfortunately, damage boosting will not work because you can't really go through it. It's a solid object. I tried it anyway and got this bizarre super jump. Thanks, game. Made finishing that challenge a lot easier. But once we're done and I went to the shop, I realized we're in a weird spot. I want to pick up the Thunder Shield, but I don't have enough points. Screw it, I'm playing pinball. Drill Baby Drill is the challenge that I went for in Speed Highway. The challenge is to drop down to the goal while destroying crates to get through. There are some cop speeders scattered around, but only one of them gave me a scare. I actually appreciated the camera tilting so I can stomp without any issues, and the challenge is over. Let's move on. The Seaside Hill challenge I went for is Trick Island. It's pretty simple. Do 35 tricks. The 3D sections are very easy since I just need to walk around the egg ponds. It's the 2D section that messed me up twice. First it was the spinner, then it was the egg pond I tried jumping over. Third time's the charm because I went for the boost and stopped it in time to go face to face with a different spinner. But the challenge is over. The fight against Shadow is what you would expect, and after 2 deaths, the water god goes down, and we can hopefully move on to the poorly named modern era. For the record, it's only poorly named in retrospect. Crisis City Act 2 is a stage that I was warned about when I started telling people about this video. There was no way I was going to be able to pull off the M-Speed glitch on the fly. There is an easier solution to the start of the level, but we can get back to that later. Act 1 starts with taking the low route until I get to this Iblis biter, who can be bypassed by going backwards and taking the yellow spring. Eventually I had to back away from the Iblis takers and fall to my death. The biters have a generous hitbox so I can hop over them to move on. After missing a jump I went face to face with an Iblis worm. This is where I chose to restart. Attempt number 2 and going under the taker was the play. From here the top path is the one that I went for and now I've hit a real wall. The intended way to go past this Iblis worm is to go where the fire is and defeat it. When I tried to spin dash jump and failed, there was a bit of time before the enemies reappeared. That might be my solution. Unfortunately it wasn't. It takes too long to drop down and get past it, so I'm going to need that Thunder Shield. This means I have to revisit the easier levels in the challenge. Look, I know I beat the levels already, but I'm revisiting them with the rules of this challenge in effect. It's an integrity thing. With 4,000 points, I bought the Thunder Shield and now we can get back to the level. I'm now capable of jumping over that Iblis worm to almost drop onto a different one. This shield is overpowered and I am more than okay with that. Unfortunately, I jumped over a red spike to take a death, and knocked out an Iblis taker because I jumped when I noticed a lack of ground. Troubles don't stop here. Another small area with a worm put a stop to my next attempt, and then I was launched out of this loop near the start of the level. Rather than being stuck at the Iblis worm, there's a red ring I could double jump into, which only puts me against a row of Iblis enemies. One spin dash jump got me over all of that, and that was it for the level because the tornado section is a breeze. Crisis City Act 1 is over. We know what's next. So here's how to get past the first Iblis taker. You need to equip Blast Off, and the moment you have control, you'll want to boost and jump as high as you can. From there you're gonna boost again to make it over the gap. And at this point, the level's pretty normal until I missed the speed booster to launch over some of the Iblis enemies. Things are back to being easy, even at the start of the 2D section. Then I was hit with something I was not expecting. Another Iblis worm that can't be avoided. And damage boosting doesn't really work because it reaches forward when it spits out a projectile. After watching some speedruns from Brian New Sonic, I realized that I would have to learn a new glitch. The setup is pretty easy. When you're launched up to where the 2D section is, boost towards the checkpoint. Now Sonic has 3D movement in 2D. Don't worry about death as it'll keep the movement going so long as you hit that checkpoint. And also remember to not go too far off the path. The spring in the next section will help realign you. Thankfully I'm playing on the Xbox version so I can move around with the D-pad. Here's where the trickiest part of the entire level is. After the next red spring, you will run the risk of being forced back into the 2D movement. The trick is to stomp when you are just over solid ground. From here, you'll need to walk into the background a bit, then jump a bit further and inwards to come back to the level. If you did this right, you'll keep your 3D movement. From here you can walk off and land on a lower bit of the level to get past the Iblis worm and to the final section. It's a speed section with no enemies until the very end, but taking the higher path will avoid all of them and the level is finished. This level was rough. Keep in mind, I'm not a speedrunner and I don't seek out these glitches all the time, so I was learning as I was playing along. It was basically on-the-job training. I actually played a lot more of Crisis City Act 2 to get this entire level finished, but there's something I want to explain, and that's this level select right here. So when I was recording gameplay for this challenge video, I stopped so I could go take care of something. And when I did, I paused OBS. When I came back and I was ready to record again, I forgot to unpause it, so I had to play the entire level again just for the video. This whole thing had to have taken me 2.5 hours to get through, but thankfully I did it twice and I have it recorded, so we can finally move on. We're back to modern Sonic gameplay in Rooftop Run. I hit the rainbow ring at the start but fell off, and now I'm surrounded by egg fighters. Again, the 3D gave me a huge advantage, with the only problem being near this egg launcher. Things get interesting in the 2D section, where I'm narrowly avoiding the arrow cannon. Then I really screw up. As I was running through the level, there are some small green platforms that would allow me to run to a higher path, but I slipped off. And just from the look of it, you can tell where this is going to go if I kept going. On the next attempt, I actually made it on the platforms and I made it through the big loop. Run past the line of egg fighters and get distracted instead of using a homing attack on the spring. I was wondering if it would be possible to get through the final section without any issues, because there are so many enemies here and I did not want to boost at all. Aside from one near death, it is doable, and Act 2 is done. Act 1 starts off very easy, thanks to the Thunder Shield. I run into another wall when I fell down and arrived at this row of egg fighters. I could have made it over them, but that high route is very tempting. The platforming required in the next section is actually a lot of fun. Dodging fighters, launchers, and the pendulum axe thing were keeping me on my toes. The indoor barrel section did present a problem. These egg fighters were in the way. Well, that was until they met an untimely end. Same goes for the next one, but I think that's on them for winding up a punch. I accidentally jumped into a barrel, which puts me in a bad spot, so I had to take a death to get my shield back and started climbing up. Unfortunately, this barrel's in a spot where, if I were to make contact with it, I would be responsible for all of those egg fighters, so we gotta climb back down. I then hopped on some spikes, which is always fun, and unfortunately had to restart the level because Sonic doesn't make the jump over the egg fighter. On the next attempt, all of the egg fighters in that area were easy with the Thunder Shield. On the tower near the blimp, I thought it was done when this fighter wouldn't go away. I had extra lives, so I took the death. There's a close call with the arrow chaser to wind up this clock and destroy every enemy in front of it. That's not good. After that, the level's over. Normally when I fail a level, it's from 1 or 3 Badniks, but I've never had a group of them be the reason that I fail. Since I need that clock tower to get to the end, I don't really have options to get around it. There's something I can try, but we can talk about that later. Planet Wisp Act 1 begins with taking the top path. The egg pawns here are going to be throwing pickaxes, and it's not as easy to anticipate them, so I lost my shield. It wasn't instant though. I got through most of the beginning of the outdoor area, but without the Thunder Shield I wasn't able to make it onto the small platform, so I dropped even further to the Spike Wisp and Sandworm room. I accidentally knocked out the Sandworm, so I'll have to start over. That one's user error. I know I could just get around to it and hit the button to go lower. I went back to the same room but with the shield. This is basically the low path, which would be fine, but in the outdoor area, I'm stuck once again. If I destroy the blocks with the Spike Wisp, I'll end up hitting the egg pawns. They are capable of floating, but not getting out of the damn way. The route is fine, it's just I need to avoid dropping down when I get past the barrage of missiles. On the next attempt, the higher path at the missiles was reached, surprisingly without the shield. I had to be incredibly careful with this because one wrong move and I'll crush an egg pawn with spikes, which did happen. If I'm going to get past this section, I'll need to keep my Thunder Shield through this entire attempt. In Sonic Generations, I can shut off the Spike Wisp and go straight into the shield for the double jump. After the big ramp, missiles are now introduced as a real threat. After the first missile, there's a saw over here. I wanted to try jumping over it, but I went further left and used the Spike Wisp to travel over a large chunk of the area. This gets me to a loop that I don't have to use. From there, just play the level as if it was a normal playthrough. Set up the wall so you can climb up with the Spike Wisp, spin dash up the huge slope, and hope there's no enemies below these boxes. I didn't hear anything that sounded like a destroyed Badnik, so we're good to finish the level. I don't really like how finicky the Spike Wisp is in this game. It feels like you're either in complete control sometimes, and in other times, the game kind of takes over, if that makes any sense. We have one level to go, so let's do that. Is it just me or does Act 2 look so blown out? Anyway, we're sticking to the top path as it's just a lot of fun to go that way. The only thing that can stop me is missing a platform with a sandworm, and it's also easy to get around without hitting an egg pawn. Take the rainbow ring to the rails, and now we're in 2D. Since the camera's a little too close, I wasn't able to see the platform and fell into the pit. There's an egg pawn that can be hopped over, so it's not a big deal. Now we're at the machine segment of Planet Wisp 2. Oh, and the missiles are back. It's been all top path, and I've ran into very few enemies. Even the egg pawns at the end of the sidestep section are no threat. And now, we're at the least fun segment of the game, the climb. The goal is to stay on the edge of these carts, so I'm not responsible for the egg pawn that's unaware of my existence. There's really not much else to go over, the sandworms require a bit of patience, and it's tough to judge a jump when you're at this angle. From there, the level is over. It's not a tough level for this challenge, it's just a long one and it's very tedious. Now that the levels are out of the way, we have 3 more challenges and 3 more bosses to go. Vector's Pick Up the Beat in Rooftop Run has no enemies, but it's pretty freaking intense. I tried a few challenges for Crisis City, including Blaze's Pierce the Flames, but the big problem that I came across is that there's a chance that Blaze will attack an enemy rather than taking care of the fire. Not ideal. I also had plans of doing the Shield Challenge in Planet Wisp, but again, it wasn't going to work. I settled on the Rescue the Animals challenge. Though it has no enemies, I thought beating the challenge was going to cause the sprinkler to explode. Thankfully, it's still intact. For Crisis City, I decided to go to another Vector level. This one has the player going through a bunch of obstacles, but Vector will be required for high jumps. It should have started fine enough, but an Iblis tracker jumped out and now I have to restart. The key is to get Sonic to jump high enough to pass it and the Iblis worm that's above them. After that, I did drop down and ended up on a slope. I can throw Sonic high enough, but if he hits the wall at any point, he won't be able to go forward. Also, if Vector takes damage, he'll drop Sonic, which I can use to my advantage. After a few tries, we clear this area. Everything was going well, but in an effort to launch over another worm in a windy section, I hit a wall and knocked out a second worm. At least I know the trick to it, and Sonic can use the extra jump when he's thrown. Seriously, that was scary. Rather than attempt the worms again, I threw Sonic over the Iblis takers. There were 2 more close calls with bad throws, but the challenge was finally completed. This only left Silver, who was a pushover, the Egg Dragoon, which is an interesting battle, and the Time Eater, whose battle I could never figure out. And after that, Sonic Generations comes to a close. So, is it possible to beat Sonic Generations without defeating a Badnik? Sadly, the answer is no. Sky Sanctuary Act 1 was our stopping point, which was only because you don't phase through enemies when you take damage. That's something the 2D games had that I could utilize to my benefit. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out here. Now, I want to bring up the whole argument of using the Thunder Shield. Technically, it is possible to beat the level without defeating a Badnik if I use it, but every challenge video I do starts with a fresh save file. The shield is not accessible until I do the challenge in City Escape. As for Rooftop Run, technically there is a way to move in 3D with the 2D sections, but there's a huge caveat. You can only get to the ramp past the barrel section. The moment you spin dash, you're going to launch really far out of bounds. If you go through it normally, the gameplay is a little screwed up and movement is near impossible. I could try and make it to the end, but I would need unlimited lives, the level to not mess up the controls in a drastic way, and for the final section to not have a kill plane around it. That includes far too many variables to make it worth attempting. There would be so much effort to be put into something that might not work out at the end. And for the glitches that I did use that worked out, I'm surprised I was able to execute them in a reasonable amount of time. I'm no speedrunner. I'm no glitch hunter or whatever. So I had to learn as I was playing the game, which took a lot of time. Before we wrap up, I have a few people I want to thank, whether it's through their direct help on social media or through their videos. First off, I want to thank everyone who shared my tweet about it and allowed for some people to chime in about the game. Frockenok and SL came in and gave me great resources to use, and this is how I learned about the D-Speed glitch. I would also like to thank A and Start and Arum, since I use their videos as a great starting point for things I could try in the game. I would also like to thank Brian and Sonic for their Crisis City Act 2 speedrun. That kind of taught me how to do the glitch and exactly where to do it. I'd like to thank Sonic Team Hero for pushing me towards the Xbox version. With their M-Speed and D-Speed tutorial allowed me to actually execute this. So there's a lot of people to thank, and for those that I missed, I apologize, but a lot of stuff got lost in the Great Blue Sky migration. That and Twitter's search feature is a little less than ideal. I couldn't find everyone, unfortunately. Same goes for the notifications, as some stuff got cut off when I looked in my mentions. As for challenge videos, there's 2 that I'm in the middle of working on. It just depends on when I'm interested in getting back to them. For now, I have a bunch of videos that I owe you, so I'm going to start working on those. And I think that'll just about do it. Hey everyone, thank you for your patience and thank you for watching this edition of Sonic Without Defeating a Badnik. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video and share it around. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to get notifications for new content. At this time, I want to thank all of my channel members and patrons. They're the ones who are supporting my channel with a monthly contribution. The Chaos Tier members have their names scrolling across the screen, but the Super Tier members receive a verbal shout-out. They are Martin YT Plays on YouTube and Jimmy Duke STR over on Patreon. Thank you all for your extra support. It's greatly appreciated. You are all awesome. And if you'd like to contribute as well, you can find out with the join button below this video, or you can use the link at patreon.com/GottaBeFrank. Lowest tier is $1, and again, thank you very much for your support. You can find all of my social media accounts in the description, as well as my second channel and the Sunset City podcast. And with that, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful and safe day, and until next time, take care. I'll see you in the next one.